Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about the Twilight Zone Season 2, Episode 29. It is the final episode of Season 2. It's called The Obsolete Man, so full spoilers for the episode as always. The premise of this one is Burgess Meredith is in this dystopian future where he has been billed as obsolete. He stands a very kind of draconian trial where he is essentially guilty before he's even opened his mouth, and very harsh lighting, very... honestly, the only vibes I was getting out of this more than anything, you know the start of Superman the movie, when they're the three Kryptonian villains are in the dark sort of trial room, and it's all the ominous voices speaking to them. That's what I was getting from this more than anything else. But he is sentenced as obsolete, and therefore he will be liquidated. And yes, folks, liquidated in this case does mean murdered.
Terminated.
Terminated, yes. So that's the gist of the episode. He has to pick how and when he dies, although the when's got a big asterisk. It has to be within the next 48 hours. He just has an option of somewhere in that window. But he's got something up his sleeve, and I'll leave it there for now. But that is the premise of the episode. So Tara, did you enjoy The Obsolete Man?
I did. It's always fun to see Burgess Meredith, especially when he's attached to books.
Yeah, it's notable that he's obsolete because he's a librarian and they have no place for books. Obviously, this ties him to his first episode in Twilight Zone, which was Time Enough at Last, where he was obsessed with reading books. Not that he's the same character or anything like that, but it is an interesting little thematic connection. And then the other thing I'd say that this episode connects to recently for us is we didn't that long ago did Fahrenheit 451, which there's definitely... they don't talk too much about the burning of books in this, but they do kind of offhand mention that books are burned.
Yeah, it's more of just like nobody reads them anymore.
Yeah.
Therefore, you are obsolete.
Yeah.
But I definitely was thinking of Fahrenheit 451. Also, the trial setup sort of reminded me of Eye of the Beholder, when you see that guy like on a TV who's just on top of a giant podium. Maybe it's the same set. I don't know. There's no flags in the background, but
hell, maybe they spent money on that set. I thought we can use that in a different episode. We just have to make sure
we can use our giant podium again.
We have to make sure it's enough of a gap so that no one notices it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So no, I mean that's basically the setup. The first like half of the episode, and by half I just mean up to the ad break, is the trial itself, and kind of just the themes of the episode are kind of like given to us in the debate between Burgess Meredith and the judge,
Chancellor?
I guess. Chancellor, yeah, whatever his title is.
Fritz Weaver from Demon Seed, another movie we reviewed.
Oh really? I didn't even recognize him. Mm-hmm. Is he the scientist in that? He was.
Yeah, he was the husband.
Well, he was in something else we did watch recently.
He was. He might have been in another Twilight Zone.
Yeah, because you brought him up as the guy from Demon Seed, which is why his name has been clicked on in my IMDb recently. It's telling me that.
It's purple now. Yeah.
I
don't know. I can't remember exactly, but it might have been another Twilight Zone.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, he was in Third from the Sun, but that was last season. There definitely wasn't that. There was something more recent than that. There was something in the last couple of months, but regardless. May have been another movie or something.
Like a bonus episode, maybe? I don't know.
Very possible. But the dude has literally hundreds of credits, so I'm not going to go looking through them all. But
yes.
This is, it's this debate between them about what obsolete means, and they talk about the fact that libraries are obsolete just in the same way that a minister's obsolete. And this is actually one of the weird things about this episode is I feel like in most stories about these types of societies and the idea of, books being banned, typically, well, maybe not so much the books being banned part, but typically in these types of societies, usually the villainous regime usually is into religion because they use, usually Christianity, but sometimes other ones, to manipulate the people. But this is actually an odd case where it's the opposite, and maybe this is a sign of the time this episode was written, but the villainous ones are saying that there is no God, we proved there was no God, therefore churches are obsolete, ministers are obsolete, because a big part of the character for Burgess Meredith is that he says no, God is real and you can't erase it just because you have said that. So interesting.
Yeah, a big part of the Chancellor also is that he has to have his come to Jesus moment.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where the plot ultimately goes. Burgess Meredith, when he's asked like what's his method, his chosen method, he's like, well, I don't want to tell you, but I want it to be a secret between me and my assassin. Whoever's going to actually perform the execution, I want them to know and when, but I'll tell you that it's going to be at midnight tomorrow night at my apartment, and he wants people to see, he wants there to be an audience. So, and we see later on that they literally send some guys round with like a camera kit and like put a camera up in the corner of his wall and with some lights just so they can broadcast it later on. They can watch this man be killed. In the second half of the episode, the Chancellor comes round at the request of Burgess Meredith, and he's there to kind of... honestly, doesn't feel like there's much of a purpose to why he's there at first. The Chancellor is kind of like... I don't want to say gloating, but kind of...
He says he's there to prove that he has no fear over him.
Mm-hmm.
Or something. Like, you can't... I'm here to prove to you that I'm not afraid of you.
Yeah. But it's all about... And I was actually getting this in the first... And I wasn't sure how dark it was going to... Even though I'd seen this at some point before, but I didn't really remember it. I was definitely thinking at one point when he was like saying, hey, I want to choose, when and where, and like I only want my assassin to know how it's going to happen. I was getting oddly, I was like, is he going to like do some sort of suicide bombing or something like that? And it's not that far off from what it ended up being, in a weird way. Like, he doesn't actually obviously go through with killing the Chancellor. He lets him go before the bomb goes off, but
yeah,
he essentially
because he has his come to Jesus moment where he prays to God to let him go.
Yeah, well, it builds up to that because he pulls out a Bible and says he's going to spend his last 40 minutes reading passages from the Bible, and we see the clock ticking up as the Chancellor's kind of like nervously sitting there and he's shaking and he's very scared.
He's certain that he's going to be set free by people who are watching. Yeah,
it's a test of faith, and then ultimately in the last 5 minutes he's like, oh, for the love of God, please let me out. And that he does, and then the bomb does go off. The apartment explodes, and but because remember this has been broadcast, everyone's watching this. So later on, the episode ends with the Chancellor walking back into his courtroom, if you even want to call it that, and he is then accused, much like Burgess Meredith was, of being obsolete because he was shown to be weak and cowardly and gave in to this thing. And the episode ends with him trying to run away, but basically all the people that are there kind of swarm him like a pack of animals,
zombies?
Essentially.
They're kind of zombie-like.
A little bit.
Brains.
What I think is really
it's pretty
weird.
good. It's like the death of free thought. The what we get from totalitarian regimes. What we saw in that time, and it's just an extension of that. Like, this is what could happen to us if we allow somebody to dictate whether or not we're allowed to read or have our own thoughts. And it is a little bit of a attack on atheism in a little bit, I'd say. But that's all right. I mean, it's from a culture that comes from mostly Christianity or Catholic background. I understand. That's the kind of stories that we get. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy them.
Yeah, I thought this was okay. I didn't love it. Like, it kind of... Like, I think the core debate that's brought up and what he's kind of trying to prove is a fine idea. The world feels kind of oddly... like, not that well thought out to me, though. Like, there was lots of things that were brought up in the dialogue that were kind of making me go, but because he says, okay, so you're obsolete because you're a librarian and no one reads books anymore. But even when they say, when he says he's a librarian, everyone's like, oh, a librarian, oh, like that's... Like, I'm like, so how exactly has he been operating as a librarian way past the point where that... Because we're at the point now, clearly, where him saying that's shocking. Like, oh, a librarian still exists? So what, his library was just open for... the past 10 years, say?
Was it just his house?
Illegally? I don't know. Like, which maybe isn't that important in the grand scheme of things, but I was thinking of this stuff as they were having these debates. Because the episode is a lot of it. The first half is a lot of exposition in a lot of ways, because it is basically just trying to get across the idea of like what it means to be obsolete, why he's obsolete, They raise some, typical sci-fi ideas, like, if he has skills. What I thought was really weird, though, how it very directly starts referencing, like, historical figures. It references Hitler and Stalin. It talks about how they had the right idea, but, they didn't go far enough. Which is surprisingly dark, honestly. Like, it was a dark thing to bring up in a primetime TV show from 1961.
I think he was, like, just blatantly bringing up the idea of killing more people than what Hitler did. Like, we should also not just kill, people who are not Aryan in their view of whatever I don't want to say supreme being, but you know what I mean, the master race. And we should also, like, go after people who have free thoughts or people who are elderly, because they would hold on to the past that they remembered. Go after just groups of people.
Yeah.
That's all.
He actually mentions that they killed like 1,300 people on TV in the last year, like, or something to that effect. Like, he's boasting around about the facts and how it's essential for keeping the control and all the rest of it. And there is the little touch that the person who's kind of like he's like assistant in the opening scene is kind of become the new chancellor in the final scene. Like, he's now the one up in the podium making the calls. He's very stoic and he's being just like he was at the start of the episode. I think one of the weird things about it is that and maybe it's supposed to go along with the unforgiving idea of the society, but it doesn't actually feel like the main character, and by main character I mean the Chancellor, it doesn't actually feel like he actually learned anything or like understood what had happened to him, or like, he's shocked and scared at the end of the episode, but
no, it's just that he's been outsmarted, outwitted, and when there ain't no atheist in a foxhole kind of message.
Yeah, but I don't find the episode like super satisfying. The episode feels like an idea that's presented to me rather than a story. I don't really feel like I got a beginning, middle, and end of a story. I feel like I just got like here's a simple idea for 25 minutes.
I would agree with that too. Like, it's still fun because you get a really creative world. It's not just our neighborhood in this episode or just a house. It's a different version of Earth that we get to see, and that's always going to be more interesting. But
well, hold on. Technically, all we actually get is an apartment and like one big room that's got really dramatic lighting.
Well, sure, but it's world building still.
Yeah, it is, but it was he specifically mentioned that it's not just like a a neighborhood or something like that. But like, to be honest, the episodes where we've got a neighborhood are actually a lot more visually diverse because they've got a real neighborhood to look at. Yeah,
this one requires a little bit more of the imagination, but
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, it's a different world. It's very sci-fi. We get to imagine what that world is like. So that is interesting, and you're right. Like, the other ones are interesting too, but I do get drawn to those types of episodes. I just don't. But I agree. Like, it does kind of feel a little underwhelming. But I like the acting. I like the story. I like what they were going for.
I think I was excited early on when it was sort of like setting up what its themes were, and I was like, okay, it's this hardcore dystopian society, this totalitarian, regime. I was kind of into those ideas, and maybe it is just a simple case of like just feeling kind of underwhelmed by the ending, because ultimately, like, even though the point of like free will and the state not being there for all, but even though those ideas still work, this being such a pro like religious kind of message that it's going for, and this guy because I mean, I don't like, I don't care what you do to me, there's no way I'm going to beg God or pray to God for help in the final moments. It's just never happening. So that aspect of the story just feels a little phony to me. I just don't
sure, but it is of
it.
its time, right? Like,
yeah, but I don't care. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. It's wrong.
I suppose you're right. Like, I'll use phrases like with God in it, just because it's such a common phrase. But I'm not actually saying like, help God help me. I'm not actually praying when I do it. If anything, I'm taking the name in vain.
Yeah.
Not that it matters
sure.
because I'm an atheist, and I was born into a family of atheists. So like, even at the very end, if it's like you should convert because you're, it's the 11th hour and you're gonna die, and you just want to be sure, I'd be like, well, I'm already sure. Like, there's nothing you could say to convince me.
Yeah, I just had a hard time connecting with kind of anything that kind of it did ultimately. And the idea that the Chancellor sort of like essentially finding himself in the same place because he's fallen victim to it was kind of always going to be what the story was. Like it focused too much on those two characters that was the only ending it could possibly have, unless it went in a vastly different direction in the second half, I suppose. Like, but given the premise of the episode, so yeah, I think it's just okay. Like I think it's like, I appreciate how it's shot, the first half. I like the dramatic sort of lighting and the way the Chancellor's talking into the mic and the way he speaks. Like, I like all those elements to it. But I don't know, when he whips out the Bible and starts reading passages, and then the Chancellor ends up freaking out, but just before the end, asking, please, for the love of God, let me out. This episode is obsolete. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, at least Rod Serling comes on and tells us we have a really great episode next. For some reason, is the pilot.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as well, because he comes on and I saw the image that it cuts to, and I was like, wait, that looks like the Universal backlot. Are we doing another episode there? And he's like, oh, this episode's coming next week, and then he explains it. It's like, wait, this is the first episode. He's like, yeah, it's this, where's everyone gone? Where's everybody? And I'm like, oh, okay, they must have been repeating season 1 between, seasons.
I guess so. It was curious.
And I guess this would create a great loop, because when you get to, it would lead right into season 1, and then from there on, at the end of each episode, he tells you about the next one. So it's an infinite loop,
Maybe he thought they were only going to have 2 seasons.
Yeah, maybe.
Just in case they don't come back.
Because for a split second, I was thinking, wait, is this going to be like, did they know what the first episode of season 3 was going to be? But he did say next week, though. I was like, but that had to be a few months off between seasons. Like,
maybe he was, unsure if he did enough cigarette ads to keep season 3 going. So
there was another one of those afterwards. I'm pretty sure it was the same one that was on a while ago, because it cut to it. I think it was just the same recorded segment. I don't think he actually did a new one, but there was one at the end. But hey, but that is episode 29 of Twilight Zone season 2, The Obsolete Man. Next week we will not have an episode for you. We will instead be doing our top 10 episodes of season 2. So we'll see what makes the list, and we'll see which one comes out on top. Although I think we will actually look ahead and see what the next episode is, because I think we did this last time as well. The idea that saying what's coming next feels a bit weird at the end of the top 10. So the first episode of season 3 is called 2, which is confusing. But here's the description on IMDb. 2 survivors of an apocalyptic battle, a man and a woman, from each opposing sides, approach each opposing sides approach each other suspiciously.
Ooh, it's like a Romeo and Juliet meets those Japanese guys on islands that were never told that World War II was over.
I guess, yeah. That sounds interesting. So yeah, that'll be our season 3 kickoff episode. But of course, and Charles Bronson plays the man in this, by the way, which is maybe notable. But of course, before we get to that top 10 next week. But yeah, so let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Liking is super important, and it's an easy and free way to support us. You can of course also support us financially. How can I do that, Tara?
Why, yes. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our man. I don't usually screw up that early. Please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildFuzzTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of other shows we do, including the ACE, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, which we review science fiction films. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these Twilight Zone reviews 1 week early. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah. Had better.
Yeah, that's us. I can't speak tonight. That is us, guys. Thank you very much for watching or listening once again. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.